Welcome to the modules for the Administration Code Regulation 703 KAR 5:080. My name is Devin Avery. I'm a program consultant in the Office of Assessment and Accountability. This training must be completed prior to administering any state-required assessments. Each section of the larger training has been broken down into training modules. Please review all 5 modules for the complete Administration Code training. Module 2 will discuss classroom materials, resource guidelines, calculators, electronic devices, allegation prevention and best practices, and includes a check for understanding at the end of the module.
In this next section of the training, we will discuss classroom materials such as classroom displays, calculators, and electronic devices. Resources and material available to students during testing are dependent upon the assessment. Please check the Test Administration Manual for further guidance on what should be present at a student workstation during testing. Testing room surfaces should be free of content information or strategies for solving problems during operational and field testing. This means bulletin boards and walls, all surfaces. It is acceptable to place instructional materials on bulletin boards or walls throughout the year, but when the room is used for testing, those same content materials must be removed or covered. Covered means with a covering that is opaque and not see-through. Examples of materials that may not be displayed during assessments include anything that may contain relevant content information or strategies for solving problems. These materials may be anywhere in the room: walls, ceilings, floors, windows, and clothing. Yes, clothing. The purpose of this is to make sure that all students have access to the same resources and that nobody has an advantage over others. Let's take a closer look at some of these materials. Motivational posters or materials without content and standard periodic tables can remain on the walls. Periodic tables are listed in the regulation as being acceptable, and accessing one does not give an advantage if the student does not understand how to read the periodic table. The materials on the right are acceptable during instruction but must be covered up during assessment. These are examples of materials that contain content, problem-solving strategies, or processes, and they are unacceptable for display or use during testing sessions. Even things painted on the walls that could be considered content, three-dimensional sculptures or paintings used in a lesson must be covered. Calendars and classroom schedules are also included because they can be used as number lines. During assessments, administrators must not provide or allow access to any materials not included in the assessment materials or TAMs. Prohibited items include acronym sheets, answer organization tools, textbooks, and printed writing rubrics. Students with an IEP, 504, or PSP plan may be allowed resources consistent with their plan and instructional strategies. Check with your BAC for accommodation details. For both test booklets and online testing, students may use blank writing or graph paper, content-free overlays, or bookmarks to indicate session limits. Students may not use dry erase boards for scratch paper. This is because scratch paper has to be handled according to the directions in the TAM. Some test platforms, such as TestNav, contain tools such as calculators, highlight, and dictionaries. The Test Administration Manual will list approved and unapproved materials and when it is appropriate to provide any resources. On-demand writing is the only content area where a student is allowed to have a dictionary or thesaurus. Online testing provides an electronic dictionary and thesaurus to each student. A classroom set of dictionaries and thesauri should be available for students for paper or pencil testing or as a backup for online testing. Please refer to the TAM for the specific assessment you are administering for details. Dictionary use for English learners is addressed in the Inclusion of Special Populations Regulation and Training. Reading, mathematics, science, and social studies content area tests do not allow the use of a dictionary or thesaurus unless clearly stated as an accommodation in a student plan. Students may not leave the testing area to obtain any resources used for accommodation. It is a local decision by schools or districts on whether to allow students access to non-content related materials, such as books or puzzles, after the student has turned in their testing materials to the test administrator. Please note this is after the student has no testing materials at the workstation. Students will use online calculators provided during the test, unless accommodations mandate handheld calculators. Any student taking a paper or pencil assessment may use an approved handheld calculator on sections where calculator use is permitted for all students, or on any section if the student has a calculator accommodation. Consult the TAM for the assessment you are administering to determine if calculators are permitted for each test section. When the use of a handheld calculator is indicated, schools may provide calculators that meet acceptable use criteria. Handheld calculators used for paper or pencil or accommodated testing should adhere to the KDE calculator policy, which is available on the KDE website. Be familiar with the requirements of each assessment that you administer. Some test vendors, such as the vendor for the college admissions exam, have calculator policy requirements that may differ from KDE. Test administrators must disable computer algebraic systems, communication ability, and internet on devices during testing. Again, see your TAM or the calculator policy for more details. It is not acceptable for students to share calculators, so please ensure a 1-to-1 ratio of calculators to students. Constant changes in personal technology make our job of maintaining a fair and unbiased testing environment more difficult. Online testing platforms provide a secure portal to prevent accessing other parts of the internet. This is to prevent any kind of testing advantage that may happen if a student accesses an app or website that could help them answer any part of the test. School-wide use of the internet for instructional purposes is acceptable for students not participating in testing. Internet use should be appropriately minimized if needed to accommodate testing. Students who finish a test session should not access the internet, wireless communication functions, or imaging capabilities on electronic devices during testing sessions for purposes other than test administration until all students in the room have finished testing and materials are collected or online sessions are closed. One example of students using a personal electronic device for test administration would be a student who uses an augmentative and alternative communication or AAC device. This would not include an electronic translation device, which could impact test security. It is acceptable for test administrators to use electronic devices to contact school administrators regarding test sessions, such as problems with materials, student illness, administration questions, breaks, etc., as long as such use does not impair their ability to actively monitor students during active test sessions. However, neither students nor test administrators shall use electronic devices such as, but not limited to, cell phones, tablets, and e-readers for personal reasons during test sessions, except in the case of an emergency. Test administrators should be communicating with the back or a designee only, and not with each other while testing is occurring. There are many allegations that occur due to student personal electronic devices, ranging from cell phones ringing during an assessment to students actively utilizing earbuds, watches, or burner phones. Some TAMs include instructions for electronic device protocols, such as requiring that they be powered off and in a location that is not accessible during testing. In this case, follow the test administration manual. If there are no specific instructions in the TAM, schools may create local protocols surrounding electronic device storage during test sessions. Some schools require student cell phones to be turned off and checked in with a teacher before testing. Others require student devices to be left in a locker or outside of the room. As you begin your test session, remind students that electronic device use is not permitted during the session and that devices should be at least powered down and placed out of arm's reach. Students should not access the internet or any electronic devices until the test session is finished. Any electronic devices such as earbuds, smartwatches, or other Bluetooth-enabled devices may not be used unless medically necessary. Active monitoring during testing is the most effective means of mitigating allegations concerning electronic devices. It is time for our second check for understanding. So again, we will go through these yes or no questions and then discuss the answers. Question 1. Is it acceptable for a teacher to use their personal cell phone to communicate with another teacher about a testing situation in the classroom? The answer is no. It is not acceptable for a teacher to use their personal cell phone to communicate with another teacher about a testing situation in the classroom. However, that teacher and the BAC or a designee may communicate regarding testing situations. Question 2. Is it acceptable to allow general education students to use a handheld calculator instead of the online calculator? Again, no, it is not acceptable to allow students to use handheld calculators instead of the online calculator unless the online calculator is not functioning or the student has a disability and plan requiring a handheld calculator. Question 3, is it acceptable to leave content on the walls in the testing room when administering a field test? No, it is not acceptable to leave content visible during any state assessment, whether operational or field test. Question 4, is it acceptable to allow students to read library or personal books as each student finishes and test materials are collected? Yes, it is acceptable to allow students to read library or personal books as each student finishes and test materials are collected. This is a local decision to allow this practice or not.
This concludes Module 2. Please proceed through all 5 modules for the complete training. If you have questions, please contact us at KDE DAC Information, dacinfo@education.ky.gov, or call us at 502-564-4394.